Sarah.
Melissa.
What episode is this?
This is our holiday reads episode.
Fa la 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 la. Sarah, this is a very special episode for us for one very, very exciting reason. It is our podcast birthday. Happy podcast birthday to you.
And to you, my friend. Can you believe it? 1 year under our belts already.
I know, and the saying is true, you know, time flies when you're having a blast. It's been so much fun. We've done over 20 episodes now. We've had
about
loads
10
of guests.
Yes. And that's been amazing, by the way, you know, having some old friends, former classmates, and then new friends join us and share their mutual love for reading and giving some great recommendations on books.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've had lots of fun with giveaways and reading challenges, and I am truly excited about where things have grown. I mean, we started out with some pretty hairy early episodes. I mean, as much as I would love to encourage people to go back and listen to those first episodes, they're a little cringy, I'm not going to lie. We came a long way, you know, between our audio-only episodes, this flashy new setup here at Rogers TV. So, you know, if you do decide to go back to some of those early episodes, please be kind, please be gentle. It was a learning curve for us, for sure.
It was. The production value has really, really improved, to say the least.
Yes, it's true. And of course, at that time, 1 year ago, it was our holiday episode. It was our holiday reads episode that we started out with. And we're back in the spirit now. Is the Christmas spirit alive and well in your household these days, Sarah?
It's getting there. I mean, as you can see behind me, we have my Christmas tree, which I managed to get up and decorated this weekend. We are in process because, of course, here I'm in the United States and we really don't quite get into the Christmas spirit until after the Thanksgiving holiday, which for us this year was on, what was it? I think it was November 28th. So we got our tree on November 30th. It was up and decorated that night, but I still, like, my mantle still has fall leaves and pumpkins on it. So it's a good thing that, you know, we're not panning around the room, but we're really getting there. And I mean, it's a quick turnaround this year from, you know, December 1st and getting that tree up. And I feel like I'm going to be taking it down before we know it, but I'm loving it. You know, I'm enjoying the easing in and or even jumping in to the Christmas season for sure.
And your son William is like perfect Christmas excitement age. What is on his Santa list this year?
So he is obsessed with these toys called Gujitsus.
Okay.
They're toys, quite literally, infused with different types of goo and substances inside, and they're very stretchy. Some of them have like little like balls in them. Some of them have liquid. Some of them have like really, it's like a sensory toy, but they're different characters. And I mean, like like from Marvel characters to Disney characters, are available in Gujitsu form, but then they have their own special like Gujitsu characters as well. And there's one in particular that he's been obsessing about, and it is the King Hydra Gujitsu, which is like basically a Gujitsu on steroids. It has 3 heads. It has a trident. It might even be battery operated. And it is like, you know, definitely more expensive than your typical Gujitsu toy. And
this is not actually a promotion for Gujitsu, so you will be paying full price, in case anyone is wondering.
Yeah, they're not a sponsor, although I've probably said their name about 30 times in the last 2 minutes. But so that is really on his Santa list. And so I do believe that Santa will be bringing that for him. But that's really it. We try to keep it relatively conservative. We'll have some toys from mom and dad, obviously, and some fun things. So how about your kids? I feel like they're still, I'm sure, in the magical, loving Christmas, but maybe not quite in the same way that my 5.5-year-old is loving it.
Well, and I think this is a perfect example of that, that Douglas, wasn't really sure what he wanted to ask for and decided he would just ask for cash. Could he just have some cash? And it just felt like, I don't know, not very Christmassy to just hand over some bills to my 8-year-old. So I kind of said, I don't think Santa deals in cash. So he had said he'd chosen a figure too. It was $200 cash that he wanted, which I was pretty impressed with him because I think he knew 500 would be too much, 100 that we could do better, than 100. So he settled on 200. So when I told him, you can't really do this whole cash thing, his response was to ask for something that would cost $400 so he could sell it on Marketplace, and the resale value he felt was about a 50% rate, so that he would still end up with his $200 cash. If that does not just destroy the magic of Christmas, 8 years old, just give me something that I can sell to get cash. Little disappointing, but it's also very indicative of his character. So
I love it. He's creative.
It felt very industrious, I will say.
Yeah.
And I think this might be a good segue into some of the books that we want to talk about today, because I think children and their sort of magical wonderment of Christmas factor into a lot of Christmas stories, a lot of sort of the typical themes of Christmas stories. So of course, our first Christmas Holiday Reads episode last year, which was our first episode ever, we covered, I have it right here, I have a stack of books. I can't wait to go through all of these. Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, the most beautiful book inside and out. I often joke I'm just chasing this dragon. I want this thrill. I want to experience the thrill of this. Luckily, this year, the movie is coming out. So I will get the excitement of actually watching the movie. I'm going to wait, though, and watch it with my mom when I get to Nova Scotia for Christmas, because she read this last year. So I'm looking forward to that. But this was not my Christmas read this year. Sarah, what was your Christmas read for 2024?
So far, and again, we're really just getting into the season, but I have, and I don't have a stack of books, but I have one book.
It's beautiful.
So I ended up choosing Brightly Shining by Ingvild Risøy, and I hope I'm not butchering that name. She's a Norwegian author. This book has been kind of a big hit in Europe and has only recently been translated and available in the United States, North America. And so I decided to read that. It's a slim novella, which is perfect for me. And really just trying to dive into the Christmas season and get a Christmas book under my belt nice and early. So.
I had not heard of it until you sent me a review when you were kind of picking a book. And I loved that. I think the opening line of a Washington Post review was it doesn't quite stack up to Claire Keegan, but perfection is hard to match, or something. The standard is just so, obnoxious.
So
but how did you hear about it? Was it through that particular review or somewhere else?
So again, the algorithm strikes again. So, I always have my phone close by. It's sitting right here, as it always is. It's basically becoming a part of my body. And, you and I had recorded a previous episode when we were talking about Christmas books, and my call to action to our listeners and our viewers to get some recommendations. And so my phone was listening to me, as it always is. And I'd say within a few hours after we had finished recording that episode, lo and behold, that article that I ended up subsequently sending to you was sitting there with this book recommendation. So I thought, well, I guess if the algorithm thinks it's maybe a good choice, and again, looking to see that it was a short book, and that it was going to be something that wasn't going to be too saccharine or predictable or hallmarky, which is, something that was on my list of things I didn't want. I thought,
your list of won'ts,
I'm going to try it
as
out.
I called it. Your list of won'ts.
Yes, list of won'ts. They were long. So that's really how it got into my hands, and I ended up ordering it because it really was. It just came out hardcover, And yeah, and I read it a mere 2 days ago, all in one sitting.
Ah, all in one sitting, which well, this is going to be a great opportunity for me to address another book in my stack, which is The Christmas Guest by Peter Swanson. And he has a little, I'll talk about that book later, but he has like a foreword, and in his mind, a Christmas read has to be something that you can start and finish while you enjoy like your tea by the fireplace or by the tree after Christmas. And that image has just stayed with me because there's so many short, like sort of novella, long short story kind of books that have a Christmas theme. And I like that idea of like being able to read it just in one sitting because there's so much happening at Christmas and you can't steal away often to do stuff. So I loved, you sent me a little video of, your reading surroundings, which may or may not have been festive. I don't know if you want to get into the sort of cozy type vibe you had going while you were reading the book or not.
I wouldn't have called it cozy, Melissa, that's for sure. I was curled up, almost in a fetal position, on my couch on a Sunday morning. My son was nestled into the crook of my legs and playing Mario Party on our television. And our beloved 10-year-old mini bulldog Winston was directly behind me on the floor, whining into my ear while I was trying to read this book. But it didn't deter me. I still got it done. Now, it wasn't what I envisioned for my reading environment. I would have loved to have been, kind of curled up on our love seat behind me, gazing at the tree periodically. Instead, my back was actually to our tree. I was just trying to kind of like, drown out the world and just really immerse myself in this book. And I mean, I think I was relatively successful in that attempt.
So what is this book about? All I really know, this is exactly how narcissistic I am. All I really know is that there is a character called Melissa. So
There
maybe
is.
fill in some of the gaps other than just that.
Yeah, so this book takes place in Norway, in a little kind of neighborhood in Oslo. And it is set obviously around the Christmas season, really in the weeks leading up to Christmas. It really focuses on a 10-year-old girl. And again, I really hope that I don't completely butcher her name. I'm calling her Ronja. I would like to pronounce it Ronya, but when I tried to do like a Google search, it said Ronja. So that's what I'm doing. But
Trust
anyway,
Google.
10-year-old girl named Ronja. She has a sister who's 16 named Melissa, as you said. And they live with their father. And their father is a pretty severe alcoholic. So right off the bat, you're introduced to him, and he is sober. And Ronja is a really imaginative child, and a child that's really full of hope. And with Christmas coming, she's really hoping to kind of live out this Christmas fantasy that she has had based on a memory that she had an idealized Christmas that they had in the past when their father was sober, where they were able to rent a little cabin in the woods and celebrate Christmas there. And so you can tell that she's a special child because there's a few people that are in the book that she kind of bonds with and who seem to look out for her, and one of which is a caretaker at her school. And he lets her know that there is a job as a Christmas tree seller in their neighborhood that's available. And he basically kind of gives her the flyer for this and says, like, maybe this would be a good job for your dad. He does get the job, um, but it is a bit short lived, and that's where her sister Melissa comes in. And Melissa kind of comes in and tries to take over this position that her father vacated rather suddenly, really in an attempt to have some money, to put some food on the table, and to, in some way, salvage Christmas. And it's really about the love between these two sisters. And I think it's a real commentary on like the commercialism of Christmas, the hopes and dreams of a child. Um, and how that is such an important part of Christmas. Um, and it's about kind of the harsh realities of, a lot of people's lives. So that's really it in a nutshell.
That does sound lovely. And it does sound like it does kind of play on a lot of those themes that are common in Christmas stories, particularly this idea that we allow Christmas to just snowball into such a series of events and expectations, and we're just trying to create and preserve all this magic. But then our real desire is to somehow strip it back and get back to basics and that sort of thing. And I think that always comes through with like the simplicity of children, and that the way that they see it is just this very simple magic. Without sort of questioning or wondering what's behind all of that magic, what sort of work or effort goes into sort of keeping that magic or delivering that magic. So does it kind of, do you see it through the child's eyes? Like, is it told through the young person's perspective?
It's all told through the perspective of our 10-year-old protagonist. And really, it's about, it's so interesting because it's we always talk about presents rather than presents. And that is really what it's all about for her, that her idealized version of Christmas has nothing to do with presents. In fact, when she starts daydreaming about her father getting this job, she's like, the second she gets word that this job is available and that maybe her dad could get this job, like, well, what would that mean? That might mean that he might get a discount on a Christmas tree and they could actually have a Christmas tree. And they would have food on their table, and maybe her father would get a present for her sister. So she's not even thinking about herself in the way of like, I could get this present and that present. She's actually thinking about what could be done for her sister and how they could spend this holiday together, and the most idealized version of that being them in this cottage by themselves with her father sober, snowed in, and them all together. And I think that that's like such a beautiful sentiment, like this idea. And we do get so caught up in the commercialism and even the idea of like this job as a Christmas tree salesman, because she really gets roped into this plan on how to kind of make extra money through this Christmas tree lot. And there's this boy or guy named Tommy who is kind of the supervisor, and he sees that Ronja is like hanging around because she doesn't want to be at their apartment by herself with her father, because he's basically in just like a, drunken stupor at all daytime. He's out at night and then home sleeping during the day. And so Tommy, this supervisor at this Christmas tree lot, he's like, what do people, what pulls on people's heartstrings, and what could potentially be a way to sell more Christmas trees and sell, wreaths, but a child saying like, hey, all these Christmas tree sales, like proceeds go to benefit hungry children.
Oh.
And it's a little bit of a lie at first, but then, they realized like, well, it would go to support hungry children, her and her sister, who's only 16 and has been working at this job early in the morning, getting everything set up in the morning, and then directly after school until late at night. And so this idea of kind of manipulating and kind of pulling on people's heartstrings to try to make a little bit of money, but really for a legitimate cause. Right. Is a really big part of it.
It's so interesting because so many of the themes you're talking about, or even characters that you're talking about, they almost sound like stock characters, I think is the right term, because, if you go back to like A Christmas Carol, like the Dickens Christmas Carol, like the Tiny Tim and the, this guy Tommy is clearly the Scrooge, like figuring out ways to like make an extra buck and like basically take advantage of people or gouge them at Christmas. Like there's all these sort of categories of types. And can I only assume like either the dad gets sober or Tommy I don't know, rescues these girls, I'm assuming, and maybe it's a spoiler to reveal that, but is there some sort of like redemption arc that happens in the book as well?
Um, well, so Tommy, you would think that he would be the Scrooge character, but he's a young guy and he's about to have his first kid. He's working. He doesn't own the Christmas tree lot. He just is a supervisor there. And there's the owner is a man named Erickson, and he's the true Scrooge because when he finds out, because they're trying to make more commission, so the money isn't really going to the Christmas tree lot. It's going to them and they're dividing it between themselves. So Tommy gets a piece of it and then Ronja and Melissa get a piece of it. Well, Erickson, who is the owner of this Christmas tree lot, he kind of sees Ronja there and he's like, child labor is illegal. Like, get out of here. And like, if I see you around here again, your sister's going to get fired. And so he's the true Scrooge in it. I'd say that there's a little bit of redemption, but it is not a, I would say it ends on a, it ends on like a little bit of an open-ended note. And it's not necessarily like feel good. Like you finish the story and you're like, wow, how wonderful. They ended up having a beautiful, magical Christmas. She got her Christmas wish after all.
You were like, maybe I did want a Hallmark movie.
Yeah, I guess I did say I didn't want anything like too saccharine. And I mean, I would say if there was an overall tone to this, it would have been bittersweet or even sweet bitter. And melancholy. There's like a melancholy to this book, which I mean, that's like my jam. So
But it's
I
also
love it
more
when,
realistic. Like I think it's a disservice to everyone that we like, you know, we build up Christmas as though, yeah, on Christmas morning, all of the dreams come true. Like for a lot of people, the dreams do not come true, or they have
yeah,
to knowingly adjust what their dreams are into something more realistic. So, yeah, I actually kind of appreciate that the author was just kind of giving everyone a bit of a reality check to
yeah.
say, like, you know, for books to just keep perpetuating this notion that magically on December 21st, everyone's problems disappear, yeah, isn't really helping people connect with one another. So, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
So,
and there is like a part that I wanted to read that
oh
really
yeah.
addresses that, like the idea of like hope and expectation and dreams versus reality. And the way that I feel like the author plays with that nicely and or showcases it in the book. So if you would indulge me.
Oh, please. Having someone read to me by Christmas tree, this is my
I
magic right
know.
here. So, yeah, go for it.
So I will say the way that this book, I mean, each chapter, if you even call it that, I mean, is like 3 pages max, and the text, the font is quite large. So I mean, that's why I mean, it took me no time at all. It's only in 189 pages at that, but so to set this up a little bit, um, there is it's right before the Christmas break, like a couple days before the Christmas break, and Ronja has it's called Santa Lucia, or and it's some sort of like Christmas pageant essentially that they have at her school, and the children are supposed to dress up in costumes, and of course her father is again in like a drunken stupor and can't take care of her at all. So it's really her and her sister fending for themselves. Her sister comes in really late, scrounges up a costume for Ronja. Their neighbor across the hall, Melissa, her sister, says, like, have him iron this for you because it's all wrinkly. It's been in our attic. And so she manages to do that. She gets to school and she's kind of hoping against hope that her father is going to show up to this pageant, even though, I mean, the chances of that. And she told her sister not to show up, even though I think she would like her to, but she already knows that her sister is like working around the clock as well as going to school. But she has these kind of hopes and dreams that somebody will show up for her at this Santa Lucia pageant. And so this is her, they're singing, and um, the caretaker character pulls a rope, and then one by one, all the children get kind of spotlighted. which is the kind of like their big solo and opportunity to, kind of get the attention of the loved ones that are hopefully in the audience. So the caretaker pulled the rope. The curtain went up, and there I was staring. I stared from face to face, and none of them was Dad. So then I knew for sure, really, but I didn't stop. Somehow I kept on hoping anyway. People can be late sometimes, after all. People can wake up suddenly and see the note on the fridge and run all the way to the school, or they can bend down among rows of chairs to tie their shoelaces. So I kept staring, and hands waved and flashes flashed, but finally, the caretaker turned all the lights toward the stage. And after that, I couldn't see anything anymore. All is calm, we sang. All is bright. And I sang. I did, but my throat was hurting. The stars are brightly shining, I sang. Oh, hear the angel voices. And then the music teacher came out and said, and now we're going to hear what many people think is the most beautiful Christmas song of them all. Hark the herald angels sing. And the caretaker stood by the curtain and put his hand to his heart and winked at me. Sometimes he just doesn't get it. That song isn't nice when you've lost your job. And I couldn't help but think of Dad, of how he says the world is broken. But honestly, I don't agree. Because honestly, I think the song is true. So that's one little part of like hope and reality of like, here she is, she's singing, and her father's not in the audience. He didn't get her note, but she's singing anyway because she does think it's a beautiful song. And she does, against all things telling her that the world is cruel, she's still going to hold out hope.
Oh, that is
Yeah.
so sad. And I think who
Yes.
among us can't like relate, like, I don't know if this was part of your upbringing, like in the American school system, but like everyone was in a Christmas concert, you know what I mean? Like, and you walked out and it's really like for a lot of people, your only experience, or at least your first experience sort of being on stage and having to perform, and usually being in some kind of a theater, or like your school gym turned into a theater. And everybody, I know from being a parent too, watching when the kids come out, that's all they care about. You can see their little eyes just scanning to find their people. And, the idea that this little girl, she was let down, right? Like that was such a disappointment for her. And you can just feel it. Like you can feel it in that passage. And it is beautifully written. It doesn't seem to me like it reads like a translation. Was that your experience too?
Parts of it do read like a translation, and I did stumble a little bit on those parts, but overall I feel like it was a good translation. And I don't know that I really read a ton of translated books. I'm like trying to rack my brain to think about ones that I've read and really enjoyed, but I did think overall it was successful. There were like a little sentences here and there where I was like, okay, I didn't quite get that. Like maybe what, and you and I talked about this before because you had read, and we had talked about when the coffee, before the
Before the
coffee
coffee
gets
gets
cold.
cold. Yeah.
Yeah. And how, there are some things, sometimes things can be over explained to you and some things can be under explained to you, and that
Yeah.
like difficult balance to get, that perfect translation. But, um,
So I think I'll ask you if it's okay. And what, we're
yeah.
making it, we're cruising through these stacks of books here. But would you say then, and now I have to make an attempt at can you repeat the author's name?
Ingvild Rissoy. So I don't think you pronounce the H.
Ingvild
Ingvild
Rissoy.
Rissoy.
So in your opinion is it shining brightly or brightly shining?
It is brightly shining.
Brightly shining.
Yes.
Is Brightly Shining by Ingvild Rissoy a could read, a should read, or a must read?
I would call Brightly Shining by Ingvild Rissoy a should read.
Oh,
I
okay.
would call it a should read. It it wasn't like a where I put the book down and was just struck, and it was no small things like these, if that's our measure of must read, which I think it really is for a Christmas book. But I mean, it's I think there is beauty to the book. it is, if you are someone that appreciates a bittersweet story and something that is a little bit more melancholic, and something that's short and easy to get through quite quickly. I would say it's a should read. I think overall, well written, a lovely story. Um, will I go back to it? Maybe not, but I'm glad that I read it.
Nice. And I think that, sometimes we talk about vanity books, I think too, like trophy books that just look really good on a bookcase. Like I feel like that will have a nice, that could earn like a really prominent spot on a mantle or something. It's very pretty, it's very festive. So
It is quite lovely, and I mean, it's very like gilded. The star on the top of the tree,
yeah.
the stars in the sky. They are truly brightly shining. So
Oh.
quite lovely to look at.
Well, that's lovely. I think I am going to try to track that one down. I might save it for next year because I do have a bit of holiday reading kind of cut out for me, whether it will end up being could reads, should reads, or must reads. But my Christmas read, my holiday read so far has been The Deal of a Lifetime by Frederick Bachman. So I don't even know if I could give you a summary. I'm just going to say that off the top. It does follow
Wow.
like a bit of a template. A couple of points about this book, just to lay some foundation, is that this is actually a collection. So the first story is The Deal of a Lifetime, and then there are two other stories in this actual book. The last one is like 12 pages long, and really it's the middle story that is like maybe 100 pages, and The Deal of a Lifetime is actually the very first story. So my very cynical, you wonder why Douglas is like, just give me some cash for Christmas. Because I do, as much as I love Christmas, I also have like a streak of cynicism that is going to come through, I think, when I'm talking about this book. So for one, putting a Christmas tree on the cover of a book does not a Christmas book make. I will say that. I mean, really, I feel like they just made a very festive cover, very lovely. But then, like probably 75% to 80% of this book is just other stuff that Frederick Bachman had wrote.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really just the first story. And I also got the impression, okay, let me try to like establish my theory here, is that when Claire Keegan put out small things like these, if we can just compare to her again, she was, I'm sure, incredibly well established in Ireland, because even I think by that point, like Foster was already like required reading in the Irish curriculum. But for North Americans like us, I do not think we were aware of this person. So she sort of came into all of our sort of purview based on this book. Whereas I think there's a lot of Christmas books that it reminds me of like when Mariah Carey or Britney Spears were like at the top of their game with their pop star careers. Someone's like, we got to cash in on Christmas. So then they're just like, head into the recording studio, do a couple of jazzy jingle bell things, and then they cash in on it. So I feel like Frederick Bachman, I mean, he's been having like a pretty amazing career. He's like A Man Called Ove, I think, and Beartown, to name a few. Like he's doing very well. So I am sure that his publishers were very keen to get something with a Christmas tree on the front to be like a bestseller at Christmas. And I think that's kind of what happened, because the story, The Deal of a Lifetime itself, you know, it very conveniently is like opens with like, it's Christmas Eve. Like it's sort of like one of the first lines. Yes, hi, it's your dad. You'll be waking up soon. It's Christmas Eve morning in Helsingborg, and I've killed a person. So that's, you know it's Christmas. And the other thing that makes it a very Christmassy book is just, again, all of the sort of themes that are common in Christmas books. One being a really evil, greedy businessman, and a very sort of disenfranchised, unfortunate child. And I kind of wondered if he made them into like caricatures, because the evil businessman was like so awful. He was like smoking in a children's hospital. Like to me, I was like, this is so extreme that they just kind of
over the top. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think he was kind of tongue-in-cheek, like, okay, guys, this is my bad guy. You didn't think he's bad enough? What if he lights up a cigarette around literally a sick child in the hospital? So you do kind of like, okay, it's over the top.
Yeah.
And there is like, you know, the ghost story. There's this character who's kind of like a Grim Reaper-y kind of character, but it's like this woman in a gray sweater. And at one point, she takes him to like a pub. He's supposed to like confront his son. And she says something along the lines of, or he says to her, like, can they see us? And she's like, I'm not a ghost. So they really like kind of highlight, I'm not, ghost of Christmas past, sort of touring you around and we're invisible. Like they really draw on those themes as well. But he was such a like quintessential businessman. Like everything was measured in profits. It kept making me think about The Art of the Deal, like Donald Trump's book.
Oh my God.
And I did wonder if there was like this is a bit of a stretch, but so I kept calling it like The Art of the Deal of a Lifetime.
I love it.
Because just this reference of a deal in a book just made me think of him. So that was like, it was
and
a good
that's the
read.
first story in the collection.
Yes.
Just that one story is what is Christmas. And then the rest are just kind of random stories.
Yeah, and I could kind of put a little bit of like a Christmassy sort of filter over them because they deal with all of those same themes of like sort of hope and charity and reevaluating your life and sort of questioning if you've been your best version of yourself. And so this, the story itself, this deal of a lifetime, is the idea of like, would you trade your life for someone else's? Like, really questioning whether or not you've been your best self, and if given the opportunity, would you actually just erase it all, or are you going to leave a legacy? Are you going to leave a mark on the world, and is it a good legacy or a bad legacy? So I think it does, again, it just really connects into that sort of larger tapestry of Christmas stories, which do all go back to A Christmas Carol, sometimes referred to as like the best novel ever written. Is this a book that you have read, or I mean, everyone kind of knows the story?
Yeah, I know. I don't know that I've read the Dickens like full Christmas Carol story, but I mean, I've consumed it so much, and I've certainly read like, like the Mickey Mouse version to my child, or so like I don't know which is something I probably should just sit down and do, is just go right through and read like the original, the OG, authentic Christmas Carol. But it is something that I mean, obviously, like I feel like who doesn't know that story? I feel like it's so ingrained in like Western culture and concepts of Christmas, and like you said, the way those kind of tropes and characters show up in so many different types of Christmas stories, like the Scrooge. I mean, people are referred to as Scrooge, or and Tiny Tim and Bob Cratchit. I mean, it's just like so ingrained, I feel like, in our culture. And I will say this is it's not the book, but it's based on the book, and it's one of my favorite Christmas traditions is watching the Muppets Christmas Carol.
Oh yeah.
I just
Definitely.
absolutely love it. And one of the best parts of that is the esteemed actor Michael Caine is one of the only human characters. Like the rest of the characters are human actors. The rest of the characters are all portrayed by Muppets. But Scrooge is portrayed by Michael Caine, and he takes it so seriously. Like there's no humor in his performance. He's not trying to get a laugh. He is stone cold. Like he could be on the stage in London performing like Dickens' A Christmas Carol. But he's really like, Bob Cratchit is Kermit the Frog.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that one too. I love all the Muppet stuff. Muppets Family Christmas is sort of takes priority over the Muppet Christmas Carol, but I definitely love that one too. And it's true. I feel like people, even if they don't even know it's a Charles Dickens story or they don't know the story itself, I feel like they quote, like a lot of people would quote A Christmas Carol in the same way that they quote like Shakespeare and don't even necessarily realize it. Like, what day is it, sir? Why, it's Christmas Day. Like people don't even probably realize that that's what they're referencing. But yeah, it's as much a part of the Christmas sort of culture in the Western world as, well, other famous Christmas stories. I'm not going to make this political or address religion, but it's a very well-known story. So I read this like, I won't say every year, but I read it like most years. And this is a book that our family reads, like that we'll read kind of page by page and go through, like, because it's a pretty good one. Like the kids are into it as well, especially because it is familiar. This
And it's a
year,
ghost story, so there's some
yeah.
like it's a little spookiness and magic and
Yeah, there's a little
yeah.
bit of everything, and there's kids in it. And then we saw a stage production of it too, so they kind of put all those things together. We have
Great.
a couple of books on the sort of Christmas family TBR for this year. I sent you a picture of one of these the other day because the name Matt Haig didn't mean anything to me really until this year because I was not in the whole Midnight Library thing.
Right.
Which turns out, yeah, was a really, really popular book. Now that I do know who Matt Haig
A
is, it
little.
seems like that's kind of everywhere,
Yeah.
which makes it even more funny that this book that he wrote called Father Christmas and Me, it says by Matt Haig, the best-selling author of A Boy Called Christmas. Like it's not even associating him with like some of his
Wow.
biggest work. It's
Was it
like,
written before? Well, no, it must have been written after. I mean, I don't know. I don't know
yeah,
what
I
his
don't know. And this could be an example too of like, okay, you're a famous author and people will recognize your name. Let's get you on the shelves in time for Christmas. But
get your
and
Christmas album out. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But at least it's, but in this case, it's a kid's book, which I think is really interesting, or sort of like a teen.
Hmm.
I would say it's probably recommended for like 9 to 12, something like that. And much like Roddy Doyle did a Christmas book as well. Lots of people do, to be honest. So we have this Matt Haig book, but it is part of like a series. And
Oh.
this one is called The Girl Who Saved Christmas. And yeah, full disclosure, I brought this book to a Christmas book exchange and somehow, talk about the art of the deal, I managed to leave that book exchange with my own book. So,
I
but
love
I
it.
am
Hey, I mean,
excited.
sometimes
I'm
that is
excited.
exactly how you want it to work out.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. It's
sometimes
like
it's
when you
not.
buy
Sometimes it
things. Sorry, we're talking
yeah.
over each other. Go ahead.
No, I said sometimes that's how you want it to work out. Sometimes it's not. So, mm,
Yeah, I think that every once in a while I definitely buy presents for other people that I'm like, I would really love
I
to
would like
get
that.
that
Mm,
present. So, yeah,
definitely.
so he has this trilogy, A Boy Called Christmas, Father Christmas and Me, and The Girl Who Saved Christmas. And I think it's going to be a good one. There's like a few illustrations, but it's a pretty like, it's a sizable book that I'm looking forward to sharing with them. And I'll be curious to see what kinds of like themes it pulls on, if it does. I mean, if the girl's a chimney sweep, so I think the sort of like disenfranchised child image is going to be well alive in that particular book.
I think so. I think I want to read A Christmas Carol. I think I'm going to try to see if I can read that to William and how much he'll tolerate that. So especially if I can find, you know, maybe a version that includes like illustrations, that might be an appeal for him because he's still kind of really in that he likes to look at a picture. You know, if
Oh
you're just
yeah.
reading words, he gets a little checked out after a period of time. He likes to have a few things going on at once. So we'll see. But one of our listeners had recommended, speaking of A Christmas Carol, and of course, do I have this queued up and ready to go? But hopefully I can get it out quickly. Maybe I do. So yeah, one of our listeners, Stephanie Gromko, she had recommended Mr. Dickens and his character. I can't even talk. Let's start that again. Mr. Dickens and his Carol by Samantha Silva.
Oh.
And I had seen that book last year when I was looking for Christmas reads. So I'd considered it, but didn't end up picking it. I probably should have because the book I read and then ended up talking about really was a dud. So, but that might be a book I look at too. Maybe I'll do A Christmas Carol and then Mr. Dickens and his Carol, and
I feel
and
like
really
that
just
book
make
is
it
going to have a surprise character named Carol, and they're going to fall in love at a Christmas tree farm.
you
Mr.
never
Dickens and
know.
his Carol.
I think it's actually about like it's like a fictionalized version of like what of Dickens when he was writing A Christmas Carol and maybe what like inspired him to write it is the way that I understand it. But yeah,
I may
Dickens and
be
his
wrong
Carol.
on this, but I feel like he wrote it in like a crazy short amount of time because it was serialized. Like it was published sort of like every week there was one like installment that would come out in some, I don't know if it was in the Times or what. But I think that, yeah, I was playing like a true and false Christmas game the other day, and it was something, the prompt was like that he wrote it over the course of like 6 weeks or something. Like you can't rush genius, but a genius can work on a rush schedule, I guess. To think though, like
Well, maybe
something
he
that
was just really
powerful.
inspired. Sometimes that's all it takes is you just get this. And I've read, I've read different articles and books that were, like even Stephen King, because I'm a big Stephen King fan, has this book that he wrote called On Writing, and about his whole process and how he got started as a writer, and it does seem like a lot of times, especially works that end up becoming like really popular and beloved, like kind of come almost in like a fever dream to authors, and they just are inspired and they just get this the seed for this story in their head, and they have to get it on paper as quickly as possible. So who knows, maybe that was his whole process, or maybe there were some big bucks waiting for him with each serialized
Yeah, he was
story
motivated
that
by
he's
some cash
delivering.
too, that Dickens.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we do love us some holiday reads, and I made my way through my stack here. I think the only book that I didn't talk about in my stack that's now just sort of spread all across here is this book called The Christmas Appeal by Janice Hallett. And I guess she had written a book called The Appeal. It's about these players they're like actors in a stage production, and a murder happens, and they're trying to guess who it is. But yeah, I love the cover. Like these were just really pretty books that I literally bought because they weren't romances. But I think that sweet spot in between Christmas murders and like ultra romance Hallmark, it's a very sparse territory in between. So and a
Yeah, it's
lot of
like
and
you
otherwise there's a lot of kids books.
it's like either or. It's like either there's a murder happening or somebody's falling in love. But it
Yeah.
can't just be, people living their lives, which is why I think when we do come across books like Small Things Like These or even Brightly Shining, um, they do become well known, or they do become beloved because there's something authentic and real, and it's not murder mayhem or all love and Christmas trees, that it can be something in between, that kind of human experience of you know it's especially I feel like where we live, it's like the darkest time of the year, and people can really go through things, and I think the humanity that can be found at Christmas, whether it's in real life or in books, is I think what we really want to see and what we want to feel. So,
We don't often do this on this show, and I'm springing this on you, but you're
okay.
going to handle it appropriately, I just know. Um, we're talking about books that we read at Christmas, but also that we kind of come back to, like that they are in much the same way you kind of like put up the same decorations and revisit traditions. Like Christmas really is sort of that experience of nostalgia and going back to something familiar, I guess. What are
Right.
your favorite Christmas? What is your top go-to Christmas movie?
Well, I mean, again, with the our Muppets Christmas Carol is a one that I love watching. Oddly enough, and it's not really a Christmas movie, but I feel like there are some, special parts of it. And it's not even a movie, it was based on a book, but Little Women, but it's the 1994 Winona Ryder Little Women. That Claire Danes is in it,
Mm.
Susan Sarandon, Christian Bale. I mean, talk about like a knockout cast. There's some absolutely gorgeous scenes of Christmas in Little Women, and like really like tug on your heartstring, like when Beth, who was like deathly ill but manages to pull through, comes down, and Lori's grandfather gives her their family piano, and it just like I there's something about that movie that puts me oddly in the Christmas spirit, even though it's not a Christmas movie per se.
It's funny that
Um,
there's some books that or some movies that have managed to kind of like ride the coattails of Christmas because I think of The Sound of Music as well as like a Christmas movie, and I don't even
yeah.
think there's a Christmas scene in that, but I think it's just always on TV around Christmas time, maybe.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. It's funny, like I that's what I can come up with on the spur of the moment, but I'll have to definitely think more on it because I mean, I definitely like Christmas songs or Christmas like albums or things like that that I always go to. They're for sure go-tos. How about you? What's yours?
It's 100% Elf, like Buddy the Elf with Will Ferrell. There's nothing that gets me more excited about Christmas than that movie. I love it. I think I could recite most of it. It is the most festive, joyful piece of cinema I've ever encountered. I love it so much. The kids love the Home Alone like sort of
Ah, yes.
series.
Hmm.
And I mean, the first one amazing, the second one good, but they found there's a third one and a fourth one too that they
Yeah,
found this year. But the original actually it holds up. It's still a very good one. But for me, Elf is like my go-to, very favorite Christmas movie. But
I can see that. It is very joyful. I love Will Ferrell. I do find Buddy the Elf to be a little over the top obnoxious. And I like it.
gasp.
I like the movie, but yeah, it hasn't pulled on my heartstrings or filled me with as much joy as maybe it could. It's funny, there is a film, and it's really big down here. I don't know that it's very popular up there, but it's A Christmas Story is what it's called, and it's with little Ralphie,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's
you're
like
gonna knock
based
an eye
during the
out
19.
or something. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he wants a Red Ryder BB gun. That's what he wants for Christmas. And talk about like it is infused into like American like Thanksgiving bridging into Christmas culture. It is such a big part of that transition that usually on Thanksgiving Day, it's on like marathon. It's between that and Christmas Vacation. Like those are the two films, and they will like TNT, the like television network TNT will just on a loop just play those movies over and over. So like very common to be at somebody's house for Thanksgiving and you're catching either A Christmas Story or Christmas Vacation as film. So that was one I used to watch a lot
Oh, I
too.
love that. Actually, when you were
Yeah.
describing that, like just being at someone's house and just the TV being on in the background, like
Mhm.
that gave me the warm and fuzzies. Like I really love that feeling. So, but this conversation also gave me the warm and fuzzies. So thank
Oh,
you. I love that we were, gazing at each other's Christmas trees here for this conversation. It made me so happy. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, all the best to you and yours this special season. Enjoy the magic of Christmas, and thank you for this chat.
yes. And I can't think of any better gift that we would have gotten during the Christmas season than you, Melissa, because your birthday is in December and you were just one of the best Christmas gifts either, early Christmas gift. You and Douglas,
Oh,
both of your birthdays are coming up. So,
well,
Merry
thank
Christmas and
you.
happy early birthday to you,
Thank
my
you so
friend.
much. I know my big 4-0. I'm going to embrace it as best as I can. Thank you.
You're gonna
Till
rock
next
it.
time.
Bye.